The ground trembled as the wind howled through the thick trees. A team of scientists and soldiers stood in the cold, staring at the massive metal door buried deep beneath the Earth's surface. They had just unearthed something that had been lost for centuries, maybe longer. It wasn't supposed to be there. No one had expected to find anything when they began digging, but now the mystery lay before them, hidden beneath layers of ancient rock. Dr. Elena Carter, the head scientist, ran her fingers over the strange markings on the door. They glowed faintly, almost as if they were alive. She had never seen anything like it before. The soldiers behind her shifted nervously, the only sound the crunch of their boots against the frost-covered ground. "Is it safe?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice filled with concern. Elena didn't answer right away. She was focused on the symbols, trying to make sense of them. Her mind raced, wondering what kind of technology or civilization could have created something so ancient yet so advanced. As she traced one of the symbols, the ground beneath them shifted slightly. The soldiers jumped back, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. But Elena was frozen. She had felt it too. Something was changing, something powerful, and it wasn't coming from them. It was coming from deep inside the Earth. "Dr. Carter, what's happening?" The soldier asked again, his voice now tinged with fear. "I don't know," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the door. It was as if the symbols were reacting to her touch. The faint glow became brighter, almost blinding. Suddenly, there was a loud hum, deep and resonating, like the Earth itself was waking up. Before anyone could react, the metal door began to shift. Slowly at first, it groaned as if the centuries had made it reluctant to move. But with every passing second, the sound grew louder, and the door opened just enough to reveal a dark, hollow space inside. It was impossible to see what lay beyond, but Elena could feel a presence. Something ancient, something waiting. As the door finally opened fully, an immense burst of energy shot out from the gap, sending the group stumbling backward. The air around them crackled with electricity. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then there was a low rumble, like thunder rolling across the horizon. Elena gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. From the depths of the hidden chamber, something began to rise. It was a figure, tall and imposing. It was covered in dark armor, its face hidden by a helmet that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The figure moved with a fluidity that made it seem alive, but not in the way a human would move. It was ancient, but powerful. Elena could feel the strength radiating from it, as if it were more than just a man or machine. It was something more. The soldiers raised their weapons, ready to defend themselves, but Elena's voice stopped them. "Wait," she shouted, her hands raised to calm them. This is no enemy. We don't know what this is. We need to understand." But as she spoke, the figure's helmet slowly turned toward her. The air seemed to thicken, and the hum that had filled the chamber grew louder, almost deafening. For a moment, Elena thought she could hear whispers in the air, like voices from another time, another world. The figure stepped forward, its movements smooth and deliberate. Elena's heart raced. This was no ordinary discovery. This was something far beyond anything they had expected. She felt a strange pull, a connection, like the figure was calling to her. It was as if the Earth itself had chosen her for this moment. Then the figure stopped, the hum faded, and a heavy silence filled the air. Elena couldn't breathe. She had no idea what she was supposed to do. She had uncovered an ancient power, one that had been buried for centuries. But now it was awake, and there was no going back. The soldiers lowered their weapons, unsure of what to do next. One of them glanced at Elena, his face pale. What is that thing?" Elena didn't have an answer. She could only stare in awe as the figure slowly raised its arm. A low light began to glow from beneath its armor, and a deep voice, ancient and full of power, echoed through the chamber. "Earth is not forgotten," the voice said, its tone heavy and commanding. "I am the guardian, and I have awoken." The word sent a chill down Alina's spine. The Guardian? What did it mean? The figure's eyes glowed faintly as it stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. Alina knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a discovery. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that could change everything. Outside, the sky grew darker. Above, in the stars, something stirred. A force, ancient and far-reaching, had felt the awakening. Somewhere, out in the depths of the galaxy, eyes were watching, and they feared what had just been unleashed on Earth. But Alina had no way of knowing that yet. All she could do was stare at the Guardian, standing tall and powerful before her. The mystery of its awakening, the truth of what it meant, was something that would reveal itself in time. But for now, the only thing she knew for certain was this: the Earth had a protector, and the galaxy would soon know its name. The Guardian had returned. The ground beneath them shook with an intensity that made the soldiers' knees wobble. It wasn't an earthquake, at least not in the way they understood earthquakes. This tremor felt alive, a pulse echoing through the very fabric of the Earth itself. The Guardian stood in the center of the chamber, its armor glowing faintly with an ancient light, as if the very air around it was alive with energy. Alina took a step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence was deafening, the only sound being the hum of the Guardian's presence. She felt it, this overwhelming sense of power that seemed to press in from every side. It wasn't just in the air, it was in her bones. She could feel it deep inside her, like a whisper calling out from a forgotten time. The Guardian remained motionless, and for a moment, Alina thought it might not move at all. But then, without a sound, its head slowly turned, its eyes glowing a deep, unnatural red. The soldiers flinched, raising their weapons, but Alina quickly stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Don't shoot," she whispered, though her voice barely broke the oppressive silence. "We need to understand." The Guardian's head tilted slightly, as if it were studying her, evaluating her very soul. Alina held her breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then, a deep voice echoed in her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. It was as though the words came from the very core of the Earth, resonating in her chest, in her very spirit. "Do not fear," the voice said. "I am the Guardian, and Earth has called me to rise." Alina's mouth went dry. She wasn't sure if she was hearing it with her mind, or if the Guardian was speaking aloud, but the words were clear and heavy with meaning. The Guardian didn't move, but she could sense its awareness, its intelligence, and it was vast, immeasurably vast. "Why have you awakened now?" Alina asked, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to sound confident. "What do you want?" The Guardian's gaze shifted to the soldiers, then back to her. Its movements were slow but deliberate, as if it were considering her question carefully. "I was bound," it answered, the voice rumbling in her chest like a distant thunderstorm. "Bound by the ancients, hidden to protect, to keep the balance of power intact." Alina took another step forward, curiosity burning in her chest. What balance of power? And why now? Why awaken after all this time? The Guardian's form shimmered with an ethereal light, and for a brief moment, Alina thought she saw something within its armor, something alive, something beyond human understanding. It raised its arm, and a crackling energy filled the room. The temperature dropped, and Alina shivered despite herself. "The balance is fragile," the Guardian continued. "The enemy returns. The Zorath." Alina's mind raced. The Zorath. She had never heard of them. The name sounded ancient, foreign, but there was no time to ask. The Guardian's voice had grown more urgent. They were once defeated. A great war was fought, a war that spread across the stars. Earth was part of that war. The Zorath were sealed away, hidden beyond the reach of even their own kind. But now they return, and Earth's time has come again. The soldiers stood frozen, eyes wide with confusion. They didn't understand what was happening. Alina didn't fully understand either, But she knew this was something far beyond her comprehension. The Guardian was a relic of a time long past, perhaps a time before Earth's history even began. "We cannot stop them alone," the Guardian said, its voice turning grim. "But you, the people of Earth, may be the key. You will help me prepare. Together, we will fight the coming storm." Elena felt a strange connection to the Guardian, as though something deep within her had been awakened as well. She could sense its urgency, its fear of the Zorath, though it never showed it outwardly. There was only the calm, imposing presence of the Guardian, an ancient protector who had waited in the shadows for centuries, bound by some higher power, now called forth to face a threat that could end all life as they knew it. She opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by a distant rumbling, much louder this time. It came from deep within the earth, as though something massive was moving beneath the surface, something that had been sleeping for too long. The Guardian turned its head toward the sound, its red eyes narrowing. "They are coming," it said simply. "Prepare yourselves. The first wave will arrive soon." Elena's heart sank. The Zorath. She didn't know what they were or where they had come from, but she could feel their arrival like a storm on the horizon, dark and unavoidable. The Guardian had been right. Earth's time had come again. But this time, it wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for the very soul of the galaxy. "Tell me," Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "what do we need to do?" The Guardian's gaze softened, just slightly. "You must learn," it said. "You must prepare yourselves. The Zorath are powerful, and their hunger is endless. But you, together, we may be able to stop them." A sudden gust of wind blew through the chamber, carrying with it the scent of something distant, something alien. The soldiers shuddered, their hands tightening on their weapons. But Elena remained still, her eyes locked with the Guardians, her mind racing with questions. How could they possibly prepare for such an enemy? And could the Guardian really be their only hope? The room fell silent once again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was a silence before the storm. And somewhere far beyond the stars, a fleet of Zorath ships was already on its way. The sun hummed low in the sky, casting long shadows across the military base. Tension thickened the air as soldiers and scientists worked in near silence, their eyes constantly drifting toward the distant horizon, where the Guardian stood. Its massive form was visible from every part of the base, a towering figure that seemed to loom over the land, watching. No one spoke much about it, but everyone felt its presence, a reminder that their world had changed forever. Elena stood with a small group of military leaders in a command center, a large holographic map of the world projected before them. They had been trying to make sense of everything. The Guardian's sudden awakening, the mention of the Zorath, and the impending battle they all knew was coming. "What do we know about the Zorath?" General Harris asked, his gruff voice cutting through the tension. He was an experienced soldier, a man who had seen countless battles, but there was fear in his eyes now, fear of something he couldn't understand. Elena adjusted her glasses, glancing at the screen. "Almost nothing. We only have the Guardian's word, but it's clear that the Zorath are no ordinary enemies. They're more than just conquerors, they're destroyers. They have the power to wipe out entire civilizations. The Guardian said they were locked away for a reason." Another officer, Lieutenant Jordan, looked up from his screen, her expression troubled. "But why Earth? Why did the Guardian choose this planet? Why now?" Elena paused, her mind spinning. She had thought about that question constantly, but the answer seemed just beyond reach. The Guardian had said that Earth had a role to play in the coming war, but it was still unclear what that role was. "I don't know," Elena admitted, "but I believe the Guardian is telling the truth. We can't take chances. If the Zorath are as powerful as they seem, Earth won't stand a chance alone. The Guardian might be our only hope." "Hope?" General Harris scoffed. "The only hope we have is a giant armored figure we barely understand. How are we supposed to fight an enemy like the Zorath with that?" Elena stared at the map. I think the Guardian wants us to fight alongside it. We've already seen its power. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered, but it's not invincible. We need to learn from it, train with it, and prepare for what's coming. The tension in the room grew. The soldiers, seasoned and hardened, were unnerved by the thought of having to rely on something so foreign, so alien. They didn't know the Guardian's motives, and they certainly didn't know if it could be trusted. We've seen the Guardian tear through alien ships without breaking a sweat, Lieutenant Jordan said, her voice a little shaky. But what about the Zoreth? They aren't like anything we fought before, are they? No, Alina said softly, her eyes distant. The Zoreth are ancient. They've been around for centuries, and they don't just fight. They consume. They destroy worlds and leave nothing but ashes. Their technology is beyond anything we can imagine, and their army is endless. The room fell silent again. The reality of the situation was starting to settle in. Earth was on the brink of a war it had no chance of winning, not without help, and that help had come in the form of the Guardian, a being so ancient, so powerful, that it seemed almost like a myth, a protector who had once watched over Earth, only to be buried deep beneath the surface for reasons no one understood. Outside the command center, the Guardian moved. Elena watched as its towering form shifted in the distance, its movements slow but deliberate. It was waiting for something, for her, for the world to come to terms with the reality of the coming battle. We need to make contact with other nations, General Harris said, breaking the silence. The entire world needs to unite. We can't fight this war alone. If what you're saying is true, we need every available resource. Elena nodded. I agree. The Guardian might be our best weapon, but we need to prepare the people. We need to learn how to fight beside it, not just rely on it to save us. Another officer stepped forward, his face grim. And if the Zoreth arrive before we're ready? Elena's heart sank at the thought. The Zoreth had been silent, but the Guardian's warning had been clear. The first wave would come soon. And when they did, it would be a test of everything humanity had. If they weren't ready, it wouldn't just be a defeat, it would be an extinction. We don't have much time, she said, her voice firm. We need to train, and we need to prepare. We have one chance at this, and it's not just Earth's future on the line, it's the entire galaxy. The soldiers and officers looked at each other, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They had seen wars, they had fought battles, but nothing like this, nothing that could threaten the very existence of their species. But Elena could see it in their eyes. They understood. They had no choice but to fight. Outside, the Guardian's figure seemed to grow larger as it moved closer to the base. Its glowing red eyes shone in the fading light, like twin suns staring down at the world below. It was waiting for them to make their move. As the final rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon, Elena made a decision. They couldn't wait any longer. The world needed to unite. They needed to prepare for war, and they needed to learn everything they could about the Guardian and the Zoreth. The first wave was coming, and Earth would be ready. The world had never felt smaller than it did in that moment. With every passing day, the stakes grew higher, and the pressure weighed heavier on Elena's shoulders. The Guardian had not moved since its arrival, remaining a constant presence just outside the base, its vast form ever watchful. Yet it was clear that the calm outside was only the surface of an impending storm. Inside the base, Elena, General Harris, and the military leadership had gathered again, poring over data from every corner of the globe. The arrival of the Guardian had forced humanity to reevaluate everything, every belief, every understanding of their place in the universe. Now, a new truth was dawning on them. Earth was no longer just a planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. It was a battleground. And the enemy, whoever they were, had found them. The Zoreth are coming, General Harris said, his voice rough. He had grown more somber with each new report. Our satellite networks are picking up strange signals. They're moving, heading this way. Fast. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Despite all the evidence, she couldn't help but feel the words carried an air of disbelief, as if saying them aloud made it all too real. The Zoreth, ancient conquerors, long thought to be nothing more than a myth, were on their way to Earth, and there was no escaping it. What do we know about them now? Alina asked, trying to steady her nerves. Lieutenant Jordan, who had been monitoring communications from space, glanced at her screen. The Zoreth are unlike any enemy we've ever encountered. Their ships are enormous. We've tried to get more data, but the closer we get to them, the more our sensors are scrambled. We're dealing with technology beyond our comprehension. Alina's mind raced. If the Guardian was right, and the Zoreth were as powerful as they seemed, then humanity had only one hope: to learn everything they could from the Guardian, and fast. It was clear that Earth's military, no matter how advanced, couldn't stand against a force of that magnitude without help. And what about the Guardian? Alina asked. What do we do with it? General Harris didn't answer immediately. He rubbed his temples, his face drawn with the weight of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. We don't know enough about the Guardian yet. We can't just trust it. We need answers. Why did it come here? What is it really capable of? And how do we use it in this fight? Alina nodded, acknowledging the concern. Trusting the Guardian was a leap of faith, but at this point, it was the only hope they had. If the Guardian had been the one to defeat the Zoreth in the past, it could be their only chance of surviving the coming war. We need to make contact again, Alina said, her voice firm. We need to understand its role in all of this. A tense silence filled the room as everyone turned their attention to the holographic map of Earth. They had no time to waste. The Zoreth were coming, and Earth had to prepare for the fight of its life. Later that evening, Alina stood alone outside the base, gazing up at the Guardian. The sky was dark, the stars twinkling faintly overhead. The Guardian, however, didn't seem to be a part of the night. It loomed, an implacable giant, its eyes glowing faintly red in the darkness. The world felt still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. It was a silence that was almost suffocating. The moment Alina had been dreading had come. She had no choice but to approach the Guardian again. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the massive figure. As she drew closer, she could feel the weight of its presence pressing against her, almost as if the air itself were charged with energy. The ground beneath her feet vibrated with each step. When she finally reached the Guardian, she stopped. The enormous figure did not move, but she felt its awareness, as if it had been watching her the entire time. Guardian, Alina called out softly. Her voice sounded small, lost in the vastness of the night. We need your help. The Zoreth are coming, and we need to understand what we're up against. We need to know everything you can teach us. The Guardian's head turned slightly, its red eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without any visible motion, the Guardian's voice filled her mind, deep and resonant. They are not just conquerors, it said. They are destroyers. They feed on the life force of worlds, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. The Zoreth do not just seek to rule. They seek to erase all that they cannot control. Alina swallowed, her throat dry. What can we do to stop them? How can we fight them? The Guardian's gaze intensified. You cannot defeat them with weapons alone. You must become more than what you are. You must awaken the power within yourselves. The words were cryptic, but Alina understood them in a way that went beyond the surface. The Guardian wasn't just offering protection. It was asking humanity to change, to evolve into something stronger, something that could stand against the unimaginable threat the Zoreth represented. But how? Alina asked, her voice barely a whisper. The Guardian's response was simple. I will guide you. Suddenly, the ground beneath Alina's feet rumbled. A deep vibration filled the air, a signal that something was coming. Alina's heart raced. The Zoreth were closer now, their approach inevitable. The Guardian moved, its colossal form shifting with a speed that belied its size. It knelt before Elena, lowering its head until it was nearly eye level with her. She could see the ancient markings etched into its armor, glowing with an otherworldly light. "I have waited for this moment," the Guardian said, its voice resonating in her mind. "But you must act quickly. The Zorath are relentless. You must unite the people of this world. Only together will you stand a chance." Elena nodded, determination filling her heart. We will do whatever it takes." As she turned to leave, the Guardian's voice echoed in her mind once more. "Time is short. The storm is coming." And with that, Elena knew that the final battle for Earth, and perhaps for the entire galaxy, had begun. The base was alive with activity as the news of the Zorath's arrival spread across the globe. Nations were scrambling to prepare, mobilizing forces they never thought they'd need, and trying to understand the enemy they were about to face. Elena felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders as the world's leaders and military officials worked tirelessly to set up defenses. The Guardian's presence was both a beacon of hope and a symbol of the unknown, a powerful ally, but one whose true purpose was still unclear. Elena stood at the command center once again, watching the streams of data pouring in from across the world. Satellite feeds, military reports, and encrypted communications all hinted at the same terrifying reality. The Zorath were closing in fast. Yet there was no sign of their ships, nothing visible in the sky. It was as if they were already here, invisible, waiting for the moment to strike. "We're running out of time," General Harris said, his voice low but heavy with the burden of command. He rubbed his eyes, clearly exhausted. "We've mobilized every military asset we have, but it's not enough. We don't know what we're dealing with." "Not really." Elena couldn't help but agree. Everything they had was barely a match for what they were up against. She had seen the Guardian's power firsthand, but the unknowns were overwhelming. The Zorath, according to what the Guardian had told her, were a species that didn't just conquer worlds. They erased them. A chilling thought. "They're here," Lieutenant Jordan said suddenly, her voice taut with urgency. "I'm picking up a massive energy signature from the outer atmosphere. It's them." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "How long until they reach Earth?" "Minutes," Jordan replied. "We don't have much time to prepare." A cold wave of panic swept through the room, but Elena steeled herself. Panic wouldn't help. She knew what they had to do, but the question still loomed in her mind. Could humanity unite in time? Could they find a way to fight an enemy they knew so little about? "Where's the Guardian?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. "It's still at the base," General Harris answered. "Waiting, like always. We need to figure out how to use it, how to fight alongside it. But if the Zorath are as powerful as the Guardian says, that might not be enough." Elena nodded. "We have no choice. We have to try." Without another word, she turned and headed toward the Guardian's location. The walk to the base's outer perimeter felt longer than it should have, each step heavy with the reality of what was coming. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, the Guardian's presence drawing closer and closer. When she finally reached the clearing where the Guardian stood, the sight of it took her breath away. The towering figure was even more imposing up close, its armor glimmering in the fading light of day, its red eyes like burning coals. It was motionless, but Elena knew it was aware of her every step. "Guardian," Elena called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. "The Zorath are coming. We need your help. We need to understand how to fight them." The Guardian's head slowly turned toward her, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. For a long moment, there was nothing but the silence of the world around them. Then, its voice filled her mind, resonating with power and ancient knowledge. "You are ready," it said, its tone neither comforting nor harsh. Just, certain. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Ready for what? The Guardian's massive form shifted slightly. "To awaken the power within you. The Zorath will not be stopped by force alone. They have mastered destruction. But you, humans, you have something they do not. Alina's mind raced. What do you mean? What power are you talking about? The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter, and for a brief moment, Alina felt a connection, like an ancient thread reaching from her very soul to the Guardian's vast consciousness. The power she felt was unlike anything she had ever known. It wasn't the power of weapons or technology, but something deeper, something within her, something within all of humanity. You have the power of creation, the Guardian said, its voice soft but filled with weight. The power to shape reality, to change the world around you. It has been dormant for eons, hidden within your species, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Now is that moment. Only by tapping into this power will you stand a chance against the Zoreth. Alina felt a strange warmth spread through her chest as the Guardian's words echoed in her mind. Creation. She had heard the word before, of course, but it had always been abstract, a concept reserved for gods or myth. The power to create, but how could they access it? How could ordinary humans wield such an incredible force? How do we awaken this power? Alina asked, her voice shaky with the enormity of the question. You must first understand, the Guardian replied. You must let go of the boundaries that bind you, the limitations you place on yourselves. Only then will you see the truth of what lies within. The Zoreth have forgotten this power, and that is why they destroy. But you, your people, still have it. That is why you will fight with something they cannot comprehend. Alina felt a surge of understanding, like a door opening inside her mind. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about changing the way they thought about everything, about reality itself. But how could she teach this to humanity in such a short amount of time? How could she guide them to unlock the potential buried deep within? The Guardian seemed to sense her confusion. You will not be alone. I will show you the path. But you must trust in yourselves. Trust in the power that lies dormant in every human heart. A deep rumble vibrated the ground beneath her feet, and Alina's head snapped toward the sky. The first wave of Zoreth ships had entered the atmosphere. They were here. The battle was about to begin. The Guardian's presence grew even more overwhelming, its power filling the air around them. Alina closed her eyes, drawing on every ounce of courage she had. The world was changing, and humanity's future hung in the balance. She had to guide them. She had to awaken this power before it was too late. Now, the Guardian said, you must lead your people. The ground trembled as the Zoreth ships began to descend, casting long shadows over the earth. The storm had come. But this time, Alina was ready to face it head-on. The fight for survival, and for the soul of the galaxy, was about to begin. The air was thick with anticipation, and every heartbeat echoed like a drum in Alina's chest as the first Zoreth ship broke through the atmosphere. The sky darkened with the arrival of their massive, imposing vessels, their black, jagged forms blocking out the sun. They moved slowly at first, like predators surveying their prey from above, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alina stood with General Harris and Lieutenant Jordan, watching the massive ships on the holographic map as they moved into position over the world's major cities. The Zoreth were not here for a diplomatic meeting. They were here to destroy. They're making their move, Lieutenant Jordan said, her voice tight with fear. They're surrounding us. It's like they're planning something. Alina's mind raced. The Guardian had said the Zoreth would come with a force unlike anything humanity had ever faced, and it was clear now that this was no ordinary invasion. The Zoreth had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and now that moment had arrived. They were preparing to wipe humanity off the face of the earth, but they hadn't counted on the Guardian's awakening. We need to act now, General Harris said, turning to Alina. We can't sit here and wait for them to take the first shot. I agree, Alina said, her voice steady despite the tension rising in her. But we can't just rush into battle. The Zoreth are smarter than that. They've been around for centuries. They won't fall easily. But we have to try, General Harris insisted. What other choice do we have? "We have the Guardian," Alina said, "but we need more than just its power. We need to harness the power within ourselves, just like it said." "How do we do that?" Lieutenant Jordan asked, skepticism in her voice. "You're asking us to believe in something we don't understand." Alina turned to face her, her gaze unwavering. "I know it's hard to believe, but this isn't just about weapons or strength. It's about something deeper, something the Zoreth have forgotten, and something humanity still has. I don't know exactly how it works, but the Guardian has shown me the way. If we can awaken this power, we stand a chance." There was a long pause, and then General Harris sighed, looking at the massive Zoreth ships on the map. "All right, we'll trust you, but we need to act fast. We can't let them reach the surface." Alina nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "We'll have to bring the people together. If we want to stand a chance, humanity needs to unite, and they need to understand the truth. This isn't just a war for Earth, it's a war for the future of the entire galaxy." The ground beneath them shook, and the room filled with the low hum of the base's alert system. The first shots had been fired. The Zoreth weren't waiting any longer. Alina rushed to the central control panel and began issuing orders, coordinating with military forces around the world. She could feel the weight of history pressing on her. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. She had to make it count. "We need to broadcast the truth," Alina said, her voice steady, as she turned to the others. "We can't let fear control us. We need to tell the people of Earth what they're up against. We need to show them what the Guardian has shown me, their true potential." General Harris and Lieutenant Jordan exchanged a look, but they didn't hesitate. "Agreed," the general said. "We'll need to get the message out to every nation, every military force, every civilian." Alina nodded. "We'll do it together. Earth has always been divided, but now is the time for unity. We must rise as one." The command center sprang into action as teams worked to send the message. Alina watched as the screen flickered to life, broadcasting her image to every corner of the world. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves, and began to speak. "People of Earth," she said, her voice strong and clear, "we are facing a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered. The Zoreth have come, and their goal is simple, to destroy us. But we are not alone. The Guardian, an ancient protector, has awakened, and with its help, we can fight back. But to defeat the Zoreth, we need more than just weapons. We need to unlock the power within ourselves, a power that has been hidden, dormant for centuries. Together, we have the strength to stand against the Zoreth. Together, we can rise and protect our world. Our future depends on it." The message was broadcast across every screen on Earth, from the farthest reaches of Antarctica to the bustling cities of Europe and North America. The world stopped, breathless, as Alina's words reached them. There was no turning back now. The truth had been revealed. As the message ended, Alina turned to General Harris, who was watching her with a new respect. "You did it," he said quietly. "You've brought the world together." Alina shook her head. "It's not just me. It's all of us. Humanity is strong when we stand together. We have the power to fight back, but only if we believe in it." Outside, the Zoreth ships continued to move into position, their presence a constant reminder of the storm that was about to break. The first wave of attacks began to rain down from above, their weapons cutting through the atmosphere with deadly precision. But in that moment, as the world united in the face of the unknown, something changed. People all over the globe, soldiers, civilians, leaders, felt the surge of energy that the Guardian had spoken of. It was a strange, overwhelming sensation, as if the very fabric of reality had shifted. It was a power that connected them all, a collective strength that they had never known before. And as the Zoreth ships began their descent, Earth responded. In cities around the world, people began to gather, standing together, united by the newfound power coursing through them. The Guardian had shown them the way. And now it was time to take their first steps into a new future, a future where humanity could shape its own destiny. The battle for Earth had begun, but it was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the soul of the galaxy, and humanity was ready.